Joe Holbrook here, the Cloud Tech Guy. Welcome aboard. I'm so excited that you're here. Now, we know that this job market right now, if you're looking for work, is absolutely bonkers. It's freaking ridiculous. And I want to talk about a few things to help people prepare for your job search if you haven't already done so. This is a different market than I've ever seen. I've been through the dot-com bust. I've been through the financial crisis. And this by far is the most challenging. And I'm going to explain the 5 things that I realized I'm doing wrong in this market. Some of it may be obvious, some of it will not be obvious. So stick around. Let's go ahead now and talk about the 5 areas that we have to improve upon in our job search. The first mistake I made was not to customize my resume for each role. Now, it's important to realize that this market is different than the other markets. And the reason is because we have AI-enabled tracking systems. In other words, these are applicant tracking systems that are now using AI. This is not true, for example, in 2008 or the dot-com days. And what has occurred now is instead of sending a resume into a job site that might get actually viewed by pretty much a recruiter every time, now we're seeing applicant tracking systems reject resumes and just throw the resume in a bit bucket somewhere. And now we don't have a person looking at that resume. So the first mistake I made was what? Not to customize a resume. If you don't typically score 80% or higher on the ATS scoring system, in other words, you have to have all the keywords and all the requirements met, at least 80% from that percentage that they set. It could be higher, it could be a little bit lower. You're not even going to get viewed by a human. The next mistake I made was trusting people. Okay, this may seem counterintuitive because I've been a trusting person all my life. Matter of fact, I'm probably foolishly trusting. And I'm going to explain a scenario here that I went into, and I want you to, again, think about this from your perspective. I send a resume over to a recruiter. This recruiter said, "You look great. I'm going to send you the hiring manager." And this went on for like a week. And then he goes, "Okay, you look good. Can you update the resume again?" I then send the resume again another week later. Guess what? He says the hiring manager is wanting to see more experience in this area. So guess what? Another week. I had to change a few things. And then he goes, "Okay, we'll set up an interview." Well, guess what? This interview was set up and this person apparently never showed up. I'm not sure what happened with that company. I don't want to mention the company or the recruiter. It could have been a legitimate mistake. On the other hand, it could have been just someone just trying to make promises they couldn't make. I don't know. So you have to be careful with dealing with these people. And the challenge is that a lot of these recruiters now, they're overseas. They're not even the US. Most of them have a different approach to how they do business. And this is, again, something you have to be cautious with. And never, ever give more personal information to these recruiters than you need to. I'll leave it at that. Yes, perhaps foolish. The reality is that companies want experience. They want proven trails of records. They want to see what you've done and who you did it with or for, right? The challenge here is that age can matter. And this is really a big deal when you have a younger manager. So as an example, I'll give you this scenario. I was interviewing for an SE role, sales engineer role, which I've got tons of experience in, sold millions and millions in solutions, for crying out loud. And the manager is like in his 20s, okay? I'm clearly not in my 20s, but I'm not, much over 50. I'm okay with saying that because the reality is that we all will go through this at one point in time in our work careers. So it turns out that the manager seemed to appear a little uncomfortable with someone older reporting to him. At least that was my impression with this security vendor. I could be wrong, but again, my intuition, I believe, has been correct in the past, so I'm going to trust my intuition on this. The fourth mistake I made was to misread the political climate and how it would affect the economics. Now, there's no question the commercial sector was under pressure even before the new administration got in. The layoffs were starting a lot earlier than that, no question about it. However, I didn't totally see how the political environment would affect the government contractor economics, or even the federal sector, I should say, in general. And so typically, I would be able to float between government contracts and commercial contracts without even a challenge. Matter of fact, if I had a week or two off, it would be rare. Now, this is different. Why is this different? We have the grifters in chief cutting just any contracts that they can find. However, they're not cutting the real grifts like NASA or a lot of the DoD or these intelligence agencies and, just other stuff. A lot more they could cut. They didn't have to cut stuff that was actually useful. But again, that's just the political environment we're in right now. And I'm not into politics, trust me. So the fourth mistake I made was to misread the current political and economic environment. The last mistake I made was to be too honest. And what do I mean by that? Honesty sometimes is a liability. Sometimes if you go into an interview, you want to say how great you are, how freaking amazing you are, how you walk on water. You're the next, Jesus Christ, right? That's what they want to hear. I approach things differently. If I don't do something really well, I don't pretend I do it well. I just don't pretend well. And I realize being honest is probably my number one liability. Because in this market, honesty does not pay. Trust me on this. So what are your thoughts on the current market? What are you seeing? Any suggestions for anyone looking for work? Let people know in the comments below. Please do like this video and also subscribe as well. So what are your thoughts on the current job market? What are you seeing? What are you doing to make your search easier? Please let people know in the comments. Also, please do like this video and subscribe. That'll help the channel greatly. Have a great day.